All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. All right. We're going to keep the same energy. We had a wonderful presentation and session from Alita and Kenyatta. And so we want to make sure that we don't disappoint, correct? All right. And I love the energy so far because, as Black people, we always have these things that we do, whether it's amen or it's a And so we want to make sure that we keep that going, right? To keep the energy. And so I am completely delighted to have the opportunity to speak with this afternoon, Marguerite and Stephen. And so I just want to take the opportunity to give you all the chance to just say a little bit more about yourselves and your role in your prospective companies and what you do, please.
Hi, everybody. How's the morning going? Or afternoon? It's like, good. Well, I'm happy to be here. I'm Marguerite Presley Davis. I'm the CEO and founder of Finance Savvy CEO. So we are an ed tech, fintech that's focused on helping people of color stay in business longer, generate more profits with the ultimate goal of being able to help you improve your financial confidence and competence when it comes to making money decisions for your business. We focus on helping you to raise capital, financially plan, as well as build community and safe spaces around conversations around money.
Hello, and I'm not on. Okay, I think I'm on now. So I'm Steve Riddick. I am vice president at Visa. Been in finance and fintech for probably the past 25 years or so. Started in banking, and then from banking, I managed a credit union, then went over into commercial banking, and then eventually went into the payment space. I am just a lover of payments and the money movement and all that. Like, I tell people when I was probably about 6 years old, my mom asked me a question. She said, Steve, you know what? Well, what do you want to do when you get older? I said, well, or she said, what do you want to be when you get older? I said, rich. And didn't go all that well with the that conversation, but some of it has stayed the same in the sense of not necessarily just for the sake of having your network. Now, don't get me wrong, that's important as well, but the game of it all and understanding that game. And so I've spent, in addition to it being my day job and my profession, I spent most of my life working with various different colleges and high schools and different elementary schools, doing speeches at other companies and consulting in companies, just to help people understand the game of money, especially people that look like me and look like most of the people that are in this room. So that's me.
All right, thank you both. And please make sure that you are taking notes. You're making sure that you are aware of who's speaking so that you can connect with them after the session. So we are talking about financial freedom, breaking the racial wealth gap. So what are some historical factors and systemic barriers that have contributed to challenges Black people face in building generational wealth?
Yeah, I think one of the major systemic barriers has just been our ability to access the knowledge around finances and money and being really involved in those financial conversations. I mean, even if you look at like our banking system and our ability to get really preferential interest rates and how predatory lending has really existed in this country for decades. I think that those are some of the biggest things that have historically affected us. And you think, oh, well, predatory lending practices don't exist now, or hey, I have the same educational opportunities that my counterparts who don't look like me. But I think when we talk about really building our generational wealth, it's not about what's happening around us right now that's affecting us. It's about, hey, did your parents have the education? Did they have the educational opportunities that they passed along to you about money? Probably not in a lot of instances, because they weren't afforded those opportunities that happen formally in institutions, universities, the whole nine, that others may have the luxury of benefiting from.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I think, and the addition I would add, so one of the biggest things in terms of generational wealth has always been real estate, and likewise your ability to be able to even play the game in the stock market. Now the interesting thing is this, and this is this. I mean, I've been telling myself I'm gonna do a podcast for this for forever. But the date I want everyone to think about is May 17th, 1792. All right, May 17th, 1792. Now, that was the day when the New York Stock Exchange was created. But does anyone else know what was going on in 1792? Yeah, we were still considered property. So May 17th, 1792 is when the New York Stock Exchange started. Then it wasn't until June 19th, 1865, when the last slaves were officially told that they were free, right, in Texas. Juneteenth, that's where that comes from. So that was 73 years later. So again, the stock market was going on for 73 years, and we weren't even able to get to the game, right? Then it wasn't until 1949, when the first black stockbrokers were even on the scene. Prior to that, if I go to a stockbroker and say, hey, I've saved up this $200, me as an African-American male, go to a Caucasian stockbroker, say I've saved a couple $100, can you invest it? Back in those times, then that money was gone the minute that I gave it to them, right? Because of all of the things that were going on during that time. So think about it, 157 years occurred before African Americans were even allowed to be part of the game. That's like if you played Monopoly, that's like letting the person that's playing with you go around the board 157 times, getting whatever property that they want to get, doing all these sort of things, and finally you show up and say, hey, it's time for me to roll my first time. Yeah, you're well behind, and for generations. So it's things like that that have happened that have actually caused us over and over and over and over to be behind. That being said, things like what you just said with the not like I'm a big believer of, yep, you know what? I can't control what happened to me, but doggone it, I control what I do from this point out. So we don't have to stay at that point. But yeah, there are certain things that have been against us. Like again, with stocks, there's 25% of Caucasians, last time I remember, are invested in stocks. We're talking about even 401k and IRA, like basic stuff. I'm not even talking about Bitcoin and you investing in, you know, whatever the newest stock of the day is. 25% of Caucasians, 8% of African Americans, right? When you talk about real estate, 73% of Caucasians have own their own home, about 44% of African Americans. So when you talk about wealth, for every $1 of wealth that a Caucasian has, African Americans have 12 cents. Like there's a problem, and this has happened over and over and over and over the years, and now there's just things that we have to do to be able to close that gap.
Ooh, we can go home after that. So, Stephen, what I heard you say, and Marguerite, I heard knowledge, I heard legacy. So share with us, what are some personal things that you have encountered in terms of growing your own personal wealth, any setbacks that you've had, and how you have been able to overcome them, and what are you doing now in order for you to continue to move forward?
I think in the work that I do, I am constantly in the room with venture capitalists, venture firms, trying to help small business owners to raise capital. I think when I think about those situations in the rooms, oftentimes you are pitching to a room of individuals or a panel of individuals that look nothing like you. So if we play this scenario through, right, we're raising capital for a Black founder, the individuals they're pitching to, typically it's white males. It's often very challenging, or there is a barrier there that exists to help them understand not only the founder's story, not only understand why their traction levels may look different from an individual founder who has had that small money loan of $1 million from his dad, right? So it is those conversations where I feel like on a weekly basis, you often see that barrier that exists from a generational wealth perspective that still happens today. So I tell you that story to say that one of the biggest opportunities of wealth acceleration, and one that I've taken advantage of, is definitely getting into the game of entrepreneurship. I started my career out on Wall Street. I started out at Goldman Sachs. I've been in the industry for almost 20 years now. But why I got into entrepreneurship was because I saw the opportunity to not only help others from a financial acumen perspective, but because I saw the ability to own my own story, own my ability to create an amount of wealth that didn't have a glass ceiling, that didn't have a cap on how much I could make. I think there's a large opportunity for people of color, especially because we are so innovative as a culture in general, to take advantage of it. But I think the key is not taking advantage of entrepreneurship and going into it. It is about going into it and making the decision that I will do the steps to make my entrepreneurship endeavor profitable. Because there is a big difference between I started a business and I am staying in business and I am thriving in business. So I would say that is one of the tools to wealth generation that I think everyone has an opportunity to get involved in, no matter if it's, you decide to leave that 9 to 5 for it, or if it is something that you are intentional about building on the side during that off time of work and whatever that off time may look like in reality, but just being really intentional about diversifying your income streams and using entrepreneurship as one of those streams.
No, agreed, 100%. Yeah, I think for me, I mean, it really comes back to the knowledge thing, and we won't get away from that at all. I agree with you 100%. Where there's certain things I didn't necessarily know to do early on in my career because no one taught me. Right, my parents were both in academia, and so they didn't understand the business world. And I didn't really have people around when I was growing up that understood it. I remember the first. I had a recruiter come to me, and the recruiter was like, "Hey, you know what? This is earlier on in my career." I was like, "Hey, I was trying to move." They were like, "We have this position over there. It's gonna pay like I think at the time it was like 90 grand or something." Or no, I told them I was looking for 90 grand at the time. And so I got the information back. This was a third party. They went to another party, and on the thing it said that they were going to submit me for 115,000. I actually went and told them, "Hey, I don't want to put off that company. 90 is really what I'm looking for." And guess what? I got the job at 90,000, right? And it wasn't until later I was talking to the manager at the time. Yeah, I totally could have gone in at 115 or 125. Like, and it's I just didn't know. Like I just didn't know. I mean, things with the stock market, I just didn't know. I mean, before the stock market kind of took a dive, I was probably making about 10 grand a day on the stock market. But before then, I just didn't know. Like, I didn't know you could make that sort of money in the stock market. Really? A stock market? Me? I didn't know. And so it's just all those sort of things where because I didn't understand the game, I didn't understand how to navigate in certain environments. As a result of that, I was limited by it. How did I overcome it? A lot of it was mentors, it was sponsors, it was reading, it was closing that knowledge gap. And mentors and sponsors, both people that looked like me and especially people that didn't look like me, who were in the rooms that I couldn't be in. And like in the rooms that I'm in right now, just like the last one we're talking about, there's not a lot of people that look like me, right? I mean, of Visa, we have 25,000 employees, roughly 600 VPs, 180 SVPs, and there's only about 30 VPs in all of Visa, right? And we have offices in Johannesburg, and there's only 30 VPs in all of Visa. So it's things like that I just didn't know. And so therefore you need people who can be in the rooms that you're not in. And being that the rooms that you're not in, there's not a lot of people that look like us in those rooms. You need to have advocates and mentors and sponsors that don't look like us, that are in the room, that can help us understand the games that historically we've just not known and not been taught.
And can I add to that just really quickly? I think you brought up such a good point of you may not know, and I can think back to early in my career being nervous and so scared that I didn't know. But if I had just realized that there's other people that don't know also, that would have been my confidence trigger to say hey, what are you getting paid, right? Or hey, did you negotiate your bonus? And just those simple conversations of finding an individual where it feels safe to have that conversation can mean the difference of you sitting at your desk with the same salary versus having that confidence to go into your room with your SVP or whoever the case may be to say, hey, can we talk about how I can get to that next level or how I can get that income bump? Because those incremental differences in your income, that's where wealth generation starts to happen.
I think it's very interesting that the theme for this summit is knowledge is power. And what we're hearing from the conversation is knowledge. And I'm reminded of a particular verse from the Bible that says, "For lack of knowledge, my people perish." And so, what are some practical strategies that and steps that individuals can take to improve their financial knowledge and to empower themselves financially?
Yeah, the only thing I would add, caveat, would be like we have to be careful. Like knowledge in and of itself, I don't believe is power. I think mobilized knowledge is power. Like once you do it, once you like, you can have all the knowledge you want. Like when you all leave here, you would have heard several speakers told you a lot of stuff. But the difference between the speakers that told you and you is that those speakers actually did the things that they're saying that got them to where they're at, and you have the opportunity to do it or not, right? So knowledge is potential power, right? But mobilized knowledge is kinetic power. It's actually where that power shows up. So what are the things you could do to close that gap? I mean, in today's world, like knowledge is probably the easiest thing to come by ever before. From the thousands of books that are out there to the podcasts, to YouTube, to like you can find it anywhere. You have to be careful because knowledge is so easy to come by. There's so many opportunities to read and hear and digest things that are just garbage knowledge, right? That it really won't do anything for you. So it's going to be key to make sure that like people that are in positions that you admire, maybe at your company, maybe people that you know in the community, people that you know in church, whatever the case may be, that you go to people like that and ask them, well, what are you reading? What are you listening to? What things are you paying attention to? And just really digesting it and then applying it. Like it would be better for you, again, back to the kinetic power, it would be better for you to take one little nugget that you do and you do it over and over and over again until the point that you become an expert with that nugget versus reading a book every week and you don't do anything with it, right? Now, don't get me wrong. I read a lot. I probably read at least one book every 2 weeks. And that's leadership books, and that's business books, and that's finance books, because I do believe that knowledge gives you the ability to tap into power. And if I can take all that stuff that I'm reading and do it, then I finally actually am living that power. But there's like in today's world, like there's, you know, I'm going to call BS on anyone who says they can't get knowledge, whether it's formalized or not. I believe in formal education. I believe in formal training. There's conferences like this that you're going to. There's degrees you can get, certifications you can get, all that. The knowledge is so readily available nowadays that it's just a matter of what do you want to know and how badly do you want to know it.
And I would say I agree with all of that. I'm going to add 2 tangible things that were game changers for me. Number 1 is identifying the person in the room that I do not know, but I admire. So looking in my organization and finding that person who, hey, you embody what I want to do. You embody that next level, and putting yourself intentionally in the room with them before you are ready. I always say, if you put yourself in the room with that person when you're ready, you've waited too long. Okay. So identify them. And once you identify, make sure that you find ways to get yourself in that room. The second thing that I would say is things happen twice, actually. It first happens up here, and then it plays out in reality. So one thing that I make a point to do is set very, very specific financial goals for myself, okay? And once I set those goals, every single action that I take needs to be in line with that goal. And then I surround myself with people who support me and can help me achieve that goal. So it's one thing to say, oh, I want to be a billionaire. Okay, that's great. So what are those steps to get there? What is the goal? And what you're doing is you're tricking yourself mentally for those actions to follow that tangible goal that you've set for yourself.
Wow. Thank you both so much. We're going to transition now to Q&A. So I'll turn it over to Ashley, please.
Wow. Okay, guys. Again, scan the top right. You know, we're going to get some good Q&As. And I want you guys, don't even feel rushed because we have about 7 minutes because you kind of went over it. Okay, so this is a good one. Can you give examples of how you've leveraged your role in your organization or your company to help create pathways for other Black and Brown professionals?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's easy. I mean, on our end, it's a couple things. One, there's certain what we call ERGs, employee resource groups that we have. And so one of the things, I'm an executive sponsor, and we call it VIBE, Visa Black Employees. And so I'm an executive sponsor in there, and we're having these sort of conversations of, why didn't you get the promotion? Why did you get past, like, having the real deal? Hey, your breath stinks. That's why you didn't get it. Like, the real deal conversations that need to be had, that are being talked about to those people, they're just not being talked about to them. So having those sort of conversations and intentionally putting them in certain positions where, and role playing and things like that, where we can kind of help. The other things that we do is, like, we just got a chief diversity officer as part of Visa. She's been with the company for about a year and a half or so now, if I'm remembering correctly. So working with her to now just make it a constant top of mind thing. Like Alita was saying earlier, like, Visa is one of the companies that we put our money where our mouth was back in 2020, and we're still doing it today. And we're intentionally doing things that open up opportunities to be able to ensure that Visa is actually part of it. So yeah, but that's what we do, constantly just making sure that the things that I know, I'm giving to the people, and especially things that I wish I would have known at the various stages before I knew them.
Love that. And so for me, I think that, so I come from a background, I was telling you guys, on Wall Street, but also mergers and acquisitions. So through the work that I do, I work directly with the CEOs, CFOs of some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. But I tell you that because the power in that work that I did during my corporate time in mergers and acquisitions is I built really strong relationships with individuals who can make things happen. So now in my role as a CEO at Finance Savvy CEO, where we're helping founders to raise capital, where we're helping them to build financial plans, I now make it a point to go back and leverage those relationships that I built throughout my corporate career. That's, hey, I know this founder who has X product. I think this would be a great fit for your brand. Will you talk to them? So a conversation that may have had a gate the size of Fort Knox, I've now been able to bridge those conversations for them. And then, hey, you go close the deal. That barrier doesn't exist anymore. That gate isn't there. It's open for you. And so I think that that's one of the most powerful things that I can do in the role that I play now, is to open those opportunities for them. And I think that even where you stand today, if you think about it, I bet that there's a gate that you can open for someone, a relationship that you have that you can leverage to create an opportunity for someone else.
Good. Okay. So this is a fun one. Can you guys share any books, podcasts, or TV shows, movies that has helped you guys excel, or you would recommend to the younger generation to just hop on board?
You know, I would, the one book that I'll say that everyone should have, I read it at least twice a year, The Richest Man in Babylon. That's what I would say. If you haven't read it, you need to read it. It's it's written kind of in parables, so that it's very easily digested, and it gives you principles that will last you for the rest of your life. I literally read it at least twice a year. My 15-year-old started reading it at 13, and we had like a book club. He didn't love it, but he'll love it when he's more financially sound at his age than I was at that age. So The Richest Man in Babylon, that's the thing I would say.
All right, Carla Harris is one of my favorite people in the entire world, and she has a book. It's called Expect to Win. It's her first book, I think she did. And I love that book. It helps you to get your mind right as far as how you think about winning, and then you align those actions to actually winning. The other book, if there's anybody who's thinking about a potential side hustle or entrepreneur endeavors, it's Blue Ocean, and it talks about developing this blue ocean strategy of setting yourself apart in a crowded marketplace. That's a game changer. And the third one that I'll say, shameless plug, is my podcast, Finance Savvy CEO. And that's for anyone who is an entrepreneur. It really focuses on what you need to be thinking about financially from a CEO's perspective to ensure that your business actually reaches that maturity phase.
Well, okay, shameless plug. We love that. Okay. And last question, how do you overcome the fear of failure or imposter syndrome whenever you're looking to accelerate, pivoting, or just making a change in general?
Honestly, you do it afraid. That's all I would say. You do it afraid. Like you just have to kind of, you just have to do it. Like you like I don't. I wish I could have some like lovely speech on that, but part of me said like all of us will be in situations where we don't necessarily feel like maybe we shouldn't have gotten there. You look around the room, you're like, oh, she went to Harvard, he went to Yale, she went to da da da. I went to community college, but you're still in the room. You just do it afraid. That's all I would say. Do it afraid.
Definitely. I would say one thing is, and I keep going back to mindset, but I am a strong believer that it's through the failures that you really learn what not to do again. You'll make tons of mistakes, but when you fail at something, it's rare that you make that exact same mistake again. So I like to look at failures that if I'm not failing again, I've waited too late to do it. And I've missed this opportunity. So for me, especially in entrepreneurship, I look at failure as something inevitable that's going to happen for me to get to the spot of absolutely like, this is where I want to be and I've achieved that goal.
Wow. Wow. Thank you both so much. We have received information. As Stephen said, it's time for application, and then you all will be moving on to transformation. So please give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you, Stephen and Marguerite, for your time. And now we'll turn it back over to Lauren.